Hey, so I want to do a quick update on my Centauri Carbon on this really, really bad camera that I have in front of me right now. So I apologize for that. Um, Anyone who's following my videos or has looked it up has seen I have error 304, the abnormal motor error. My printer still doesn't work. It's been about a month now without it working. Elegoo is sending a new motherboard to replace the one that's in there. Now, I will say that they did send the sensor switch, the Z-axis limit switch. I replaced that, didn't work. I have videos showing that. Um, and then somebody else wanted to know why it was, not the motor itself. If the error says motor and it's not the motor. Um, Honestly, these motors do go bad. Not spontaneously. Something has to happen. But what I did was there's a few tests you can do with the motor itself. There's actually you can send specific G code to your printer, and then run it to just move the motor back and forth and see what's going on. What I actually did was first I took a multimeter and I just ran it to the different pins on the cable that's attached to the stepper motor to make sure that everything's giving me an accurate reading. I also went around the motherboard itself. And something that I discovered was that the one area that I can't check on the motherboard is the stepper drivers because they're under that long black heat sink. If you actually look at the Centauri Carbon motherboard, there's that black heat sink. Under that are the stepper drivers. So if there is something wrong with them, I can't really check unless I have like a micro soldering system, and I don't. So what I did do though was I actually took out the y-axis cable. I attached the z-axis cable to that port on the motherboard, and I tried to home it. Now, obviously, it's not going to work because I'm not physically swapping the motors, and the belt's obviously hooked up to the z-axis is hooked up to the plate, the y-axis is hooked up to the the hot end, so it wasn't actually going to move properly. That's not what I was testing, but by doing this and hitting the Z homing button, what you can actually see is when it does attempt to move the y-axis because the other motor is hooked up to it, you can see that the Z stepper motor moves in one direction and then it goes in another direction. I have a video I'll link to it. It's like 10 seconds long, and you can see that it actually does move in both directions, which means that the motor itself is fine. It's moving back and forth. So that kind of pinpoints the issue to something on the motherboard, most likely the stepper driver for the Z-axis, or the stepper driver for the Z-axis motor, or the specific pin itself. There is a directional pin. I think it's like the third one on the port, and and if that's not functioning, it's going to go in one direction and not the other, and that seems to be what it's doing. It goes all the way up and then it doesn't reverse back down. How did this happen? That's the big question. I honestly am just pulling at straws, but I do know that where I'm living right now, the breaker is always popping off. Not crazy, but it's happened far too often as opposed to anywhere else that I've ever lived. I do know that the transformer outside, I've been in this location for about 5 years at least. The transformer outside on the corner, I'm a corner house, has exploded like 3 times maybe at least, and actually happened fairly recently. I think maybe once since I've actually had the Centauri Carbon. It didn't happen on the day that these issues occurred, but my wife, who was in the room, said that it sounded like the power went out, but nothing was tripped, nothing else shut off, so we can't really tell for sure, but one of the causes that could ruin a stepper motor driver or things of this nature, a specific part on a motherboard could be micro surges, and or voltage fluctuations. So I'm assuming that's what happened. It's either that or it was just a bad a faulty part that was just doomed to fail, from the factory. That would suck, but I can't really prove that. Nor can I, 100% say that it was this other thing. But that's how these parts tend to go bad. So my assumption right now is that the motherboard, which should be here this week, so it should be here, by Friday at the latest, is going to fix the issue, and I hope it does because I have tons of stuff to print out. But I just wanted to give you all like kind of a stepping point if you did want to test out the motor itself and you didn't have one to swap out, because I didn't have another one to swap out with it to find out, and to kind of figure out what's really going on. So that's about it, and I hope it works, and I hope you all, whoever else has this issue, it gets resolved for you guys as well. Thank you.